Hey you! Yes, you. Are you picking up Deadlock for the very first time? Or do you find yourself coming back after quite a while? And if you answered yes to either or, you've probably had the same experience as everyone else. You boot it up and the menu alone feels like it's asking you to take a final exam, so let's fix that. We begin with, who do I play? The answer nobody wants, but it's true. The best hero for a beginner is one you'll actually keep playing. Deadlock's balance has been pretty stable, and early on, comfort beats meta every single time, no matter what game you play. Marvel Rivals, Deadlock, and so on. You want to pick a kit that matches how you naturally play games and you learn twice as fast. One thing to plan for though is you won't always get your favorite hero. Picks can get taken, so instead of being a one trick immediately, aim for a small roster, 2 or 3 characters you can confidently fall back on. Now, here's a quick roll cheat sheet. Deadlock is basically a hero shooter with MOBA rules under the hood, so heroes fall into familiar buckets. You have scaling carries, farm early, explode late, and become the win condition. You want to think about characters like Wraith, Seven, and Furnace type vibes. Then you have your utility supports, useful even when broke, but they win fights with buttons, not items. These are characters like Mo and Krill, Paradox, and Dynamo style Impact. Then you have your frontliners or brawlers that soak a ton of damage, start fights, and create a ton of space. Think about Abrams, Kelvin, Shiv, Billy, that type of energy. If you're nervous about jumping into real matches, you could run a couple bot games first. It's low pressure and it lets you learn what your buttons do without getting punished for every single mistake. Another great idea, also, honestly, Street Brawl, pretty fun. It's a little overwhelming at the very beginning because you might not know what certain items do and how characters interact with each other. So to keep it safe, bot games into Street Brawl is a pretty good idea. Then let's talk about their items and simplified. Now, yes, there are a ton of items. You don't need to memorize any of them right now. Instead, you want to use Build Browser. You want to pick your hero, open public builds, and choose a popular one near the top. Follow it for a few games. Now, that alone, for the most part, solves about 80% of beginner confusion, because builds does 2 huge things. It tells you what to buy and when, and it tells you what to upgrade on your abilities so your kit and items match. Now, later on, as you put more and more hours into the game, you can easily freestyle. Early on, you just need something functional while you learn the game. And yeah, some builds are bait. If one feels awful, swap it. You don't really need to force it. For the most part, certain builds work in certain ways, so that is something to keep in mind. Then we move on to damage types. Just like any other MOBA, if you're familiar with other ones, you're going to have 2 different variations. Deadlock basically has 2 main power paths. That is Gun, which is orange, and Spirit, which is purple. For Gun, well, your weapons get stronger. Rate of fire, damage, on-hit effects, and debuffs. Whereas Spirit, your abilities get stronger. Anything with the star scaling, pretty self-explanatory and pretty, for the most part, straightforward. You don't have to marry one category forever. A lot of characters like hybrid setups. Now, another big thing is melee in this game. The part new players don't expect. Melee in this game isn't a meme, it's real damage. If you tap your melee button, on default is Q, it will enter a light melee. If you hold down the Q button, or your melee button, wherever you have it set to, it will be a heavy melee. Bigger range, way more damage. Now, if you're confused on how to counteract this, there is a built-in answer to it, and that's parry. The default is usually F. If you time it right, they get stunned and you get a free punish window. If you can only learn one mechanic in your first day playing this game, make it this, because nothing feels worse than getting punched into the floor and not even knowing what happened. F is parry. As you play more and more matches and put more and more time, we will start to see the pros and cons when it comes to meleeing. You'll know when to bait out parries, when to deal the damage that is needed, and avoid parrying at all costs. But for the most part, as long as you know how to parry, that's a great start. Certainly starting somewhere where, honestly, I didn't really know for quite a while. Then we go to movement, and honestly, stamina makes it a different game. Every hero has stamina, and movement is one of the biggest skill gaps in the entire game. And honestly, even after all of my hundreds of hours in this game, I still have yet to master movement because it feels like it's ever evolving and ever changing. But the basic kit is a dash equals your shift button, a jump equals your first jump free, double jump costs 1 stamina, and then a dash jump equals dash then jump on the timing window for extra distance. Now, this is extra beginner tech that's actually useful. Sliding downstairs gives you momentum, and you don't burn ammo while sliding. Wall jumps let you chain movement together without spending stamina. You don't need to be a movement demon yet, you just need to know you can move like one later. If you understand the core basics and fundamentals of the movement, it's way easier to adapt and apply it later on once you start realizing that harder mechanics and harder movement tech is going to be a lot easier because you use a lot of the basics. Now that you got a good general understanding at a lot of the basic tips and tricks of this game, let's talk about playing your first real match and what laning actually is. Early game is 3 lanes. Each lane is 2 versus 2, and you're playing for souls and map control. Now, here's the mistake every shooter player makes. They see an enemy hero and instantly want to duel. But in Deadlock, the creeps are doing half the fighting early. If you ignore the wave, you'll take extra damage, lose trades, and fall behind without even realizing why. This is where a huge concept of souls and denies are explained like a human. When a creep dies, souls pop out. One part is basically automatic if you're close enough, and the other part floats, and that's where the minigame starts. You shoot your floating soul to secure. You shoot theirs to deny. Pretty self-explanatory. And then you win that exchange consistently and you'll be ahead without even getting any kills. Now let's go ahead and talk a little bit about lane sustain. Now, one creep drops a healing orb when killed. You'll notice it's pretty easy. He's holding a banner. Now, you don't want to play so far back that you can't collect slows or heals. Those orbs despawn and you're basically donating gold. That was just a basic introduction to the beginning stages of the laning phase. Now let's talk about the mid game. What should you do after laning phase ends? So once the guardians start falling, which is the first tower in your lane, this game stops being lane only and becomes farm fast, rotate smart, and of course take objectives. Now your ways to get ahead are kills, especially through rotations and number advantages. Walkers, they unlock extra item slots for your whole team, and walkers are way stronger than guardians, and fighting under them is extremely dangerous. So you don't want to brute force it and get an advantage first, whether it's a kill lead, an item lead, or whatever the case may be, then take them clean. Then you have the jungles, the centers, and of course you don't want to die with a full wallet rule. So jungle camps are an extra income once your lanes are pushed, but there's a catch. A lot of them you want to farm becomes unsecured souls, meaning if you die, you can drop a value and basically cash out for the enemy. So how exactly do you want to play around it? Well, you want to farm when it's safe and you want to spend your souls, of course, when you can. And you never want to greed with a huge unsecured stack unless you're confident you won't get collapsed on. Another big thing is Sinner's Sacrifice. These are vending machines. It's also a big farming option, and it can give permanent buffs if you time it right, but it costs health while you do it. So don't start slapping it in the open while you are weak. You want to get full HP, then look to do the Sinners. Now, if you would like a much more detailed video on a lot of the topics in this video, let me know in the comments down below. I'm just covering the basics so that you get a good understanding, especially if you're picking up the game for the very first time. Then we come to the Earn, which is the first real team objective. At 8 minutes, Earn spawns. Someone picks it up, becomes tankier, but can't shoot or cast. They can only melee. Then you escort it to the drop-off for a big payout. Now, something to keep in mind is that the enemy can track you the entire time, and they can knock it loose with stuns or heavy melees. So you want to treat it like an escort play, not a solo mission. This allows you to get extra souls and some permanent buffs, so it's best in mind to really fight for them. Then we come to our second team objective, and that's mid-boss, usually the objective that typically ends games. Now, mid-boss is the biggest swing in the entire match. You usually want to attempt it after you win a real team fight later on, when death timers are extreme, a lot longer. The Rejuvenator drops, and the only way to secure the buffs is a heavy melee, which is why parry becomes insanely important around the pit. A lot of fights are basically who controls the punch. It grants you 3 revives if you collect all 3 of the rejuves, and it does buff minions. Of course, they could have changed this, but you get the idea. Kind of like Baron from League of Legends. You want to think of those items, but typically after you want to get mid-boss after you win a team fight or you secured enough picks that it's probably sensible to go for it. Now let's talk about ending the game and basics. To win, you crack the base. You destroy both shrines on either side, then take down the patron. And it's not one and done like League of Legends, for example. The patron has a second phase, so if you're pushing base, you want to have numbers advantage, souls advantage, and ideally mid-boss buffs. Base fights are probably one of the hardest fights, and you don't want to rush them just because you got excited. A lot of the time, it's all about understanding when the respawn timers are and always having the man advantage. But anyways, if Deadlock looks confusing at first, that's normal. It's a shooter, but it punishes you like a MOBA. Once the system clicks though, it becomes one of the most addictive competitive games out right now. And if you want, I can make a follow-up guide that's more focused about laning only, movement only, or item build basics, whatever the case may be. If so, let me know in the comments down below. But anyways, hopefully this video has helped you in any way, shape, or form. And if it has, make sure to hit that like button. Of course, subscribe to the channel if you're new. And again, like I've been saying, let me know if you want to see more types of these videos, especially for Deadlock. But anyways, I hope you have a great and safe day, and I'll catch you in the next one.